From France to the Netherlands and to Germany, a surge of anti-Semitism spreading across Europe, sparked by the Israel-Hamas war. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. This adds a whole nother ugly dimension to this story.
Well, it does, although I must say that the anti-Semitic sentiment has been growing in Europe in the past couple of decades, reflected not in the old-fashioned way of the Jews control the international financial markets, the Jews control the media, the Jews control whatever it is you don't like today. It's a little bit more subtle, and I think, therefore, in a sense, more dangerous, because it focuses on the legitimacy of Israel itself, that Zionism itself is a form of racism.
Yeah, but you see so much, people afraid to say anything about Islamic extremism,
right.
Yet they have no problem going out and protesting the Jews, which is just astounding to me.
Well, in part, it's because the Jewish people have exactly one country in the world, Israel. So it's very easy to focus the anti-Semitism. You know, when we repealed the UN General Assembly resolution that equated with Zionism with racism in 1991, I actually thought the problem was going to go away. But it hasn't. You can see it now in the activity of the UN Human Rights Council, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and a lot of the European attitudes toward Israel, I think, reflect a very poorly disguised anti-Semitism.
Well, it's one thing to have a catalyst like a war and people take sides and picks it, but even without the war, I mean, you said this has been going on for decades, and unfortunately, you can't legislate against someone being a bigot. I mean, it's really hard to make someone who's a bigot not a bigot, but you would think, especially in countries like Germany, they'd be particularly sensitive to this issue, and they would they would work at least towards trying to put the lid on it.
Well, I have to say, Chancellor Merkel has spoken out against it, and I think she's to be commended. What I worry about is that our government has not spoken to the question, not the President, and even worse, the Secretary of State has sidled up to anti-Semitism. I want to be very careful here. I'm not saying they're anti-Semitic. But some months back in Israel, Secretary Kerry said, if the Israelis don't make concessions to the Palestinians, who would be surprised if efforts in Europe to delegitimize Israel through the so-called boycotts, divestiture, and sanctions movement didn't grow? In effect, I think giving them a green light, that's a very dangerous approach.
Is that, though, just, look, people have a poor choice of words, and sometimes they're sloppy in what they say, and it comes across as perceived as being something that's never intended. There's a big difference in saying, instead of being sloppy and clumsy in what you say, and taking to the streets and marching up and down with a poster.
Well, the question is, who is giving the attitude that they'll be receptive to the notion that Israeli actions are illegitimate, that the Europeans and some in this country would like to say that Israel's mere presence on the West Bank is somehow illegitimate, as if winning a war doesn't count for something. There's a whole background to this that has allowed an amount of anti-Semitism in Europe to manifest itself through apparently being opposed to specific Israeli policies, but which really is anti-Semitism.
Well, the bigotry is just horrendous, and
it's going to get worse, I think, unfortunately.
And I suspect it's going to get worse as well. Ambassador, thank you, sir.
Thank you.